All right. Hello, everyone. We're so happy for you to join us today. Thank you for tuning in to Wisdom Nuggets with Sana and Anisha. So we will have a topic every time that we meet, and we will just share with you tips, suggestions, and advice regarding you moving forward and kind of understanding points to consider and think about regarding the topic of the session. So today's topic is micro stressors. That may be a topic that's familiar to you all, or it could be something new. But Sana has been reading a wonderful book on this topic, and I've been kind of chiming in too. And we just like to share our thoughts on what microstressors mean to us and what microstressors could potentially mean to you.
Yeah, Anisha, thank you for that introduction. And before we begin, how was your week?
Well, speaking of microstressors, lots of surprises, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give the listener a little bit more detail on what a microstressor is. So we're probably all very familiar with stress in general and long-term chronic stress. But micro stress are those small experiences that we have. They could be daily or weekly that build up over time and that we may not even realize that it's happening or that we're feeling these micro stressors, but we can definitely see the effects. Sana, what do you think? Do you feel like micro stressors are something that people normally realize? Because from what I read and what I've been
Mm-hmm.
hearing, a lot of the things that we might think are normal are actually micro
Mm-hmm.
stressors.
Exactly. Ironically, I finally got the book, the hard copy of it, coming in the mail. But I think when I first heard about the concept of the stressor or the micro stress was I was exhausted at night and I was scrolling down through the LinkedIn to like see what everybody else was doing to really like relieve myself. And then, read this article called micro stressor, and then exactly how you defined it. They define it as a human being, we go through these big and small stress. But I think it's easy for all of us to recognize like the big stress, like the stress that are caused by big things in life, right? But when it comes to these micro stressors, are the little jabs, right? It's like it could be inefficient collaboration with people, misalignment in communication. But it's these little things that just kind of slip up here and there, and then all those things like a piling up and then chipping away our productivity, leaving a dent in our emotional and well-being. So I
Yeah.
think these are the little things that could add up, and then it's really important for all of us to recognize, because without recognizing it, without properly addressing it, our body and our mind will take a toll on it significantly.
Yes, I completely agree. And when you mention miscommunication, I think that's a big one, especially in our work lives. I can think of just this week receiving so many emails, email after email. And I think sometimes people don't take a pause before they send an email. They just kind of shoot it off. Or you may have a coworker that sends you an email at midnight. And so when you wake up, you automatically have a pile of emails to address before you even get to what you already had on your agenda for that day. So that's a micro stressor. And if you think about it, like you said, when these things pile up, pile up, pile up, you wonder why you have these points of exhaustion, or you feel like, oh my gosh, I only had 2 items on my to-do list today, but why am I so tired?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you had a lot of micro stressors that you didn't have on your to-do list. And so I've
Yeah.
definitely experienced that. And I think what was eye-opening to me is
Mm-hmm.
the self-awareness that
Mm-hmm.
these little things are bigger than you think because they're so small, because it's just an email or
Yeah.
just a last minute request from someone. you kind of just accept it and move forward. But when
Mm-hmm.
you start to really realize the importance of identifying how often you have these micro stressors, and then even more importantly, how do you manage
I
the
think so.
micro stressors? Because that feeling of being tired or just overwhelmed by something is not a good feeling.
Exactly. I think it also happens to, I don't want to say this too lately. I think it also happens to best of us, meaning we are like many of us are overachievers, and then we are very driven and productive and motivated and committed. All that are great, but I think, and also like when these things are piling up, you come home exhausted, and then all these micro stressors could happen, and then you could identify right away, but it could happen not only at work, it could happen in your social setting. So if you guys don't have like time to read like an entire book, there is a really good summary article. I think it's the summary of the of this book itself, on the Harvard Business Review.
Mhm.
And then it's a good reference for any of us to read about it and recognize it, as you said, Anisha, and then also assess our own individual situation. And I think more importantly, how are we going to address it and manage it? Because I think we all have a choice. We all
Yes.
have a choice to make. And then what are we going to do about it? All the things that they're happening, right?
I love that point, saying that we all have a choice. That's a key takeaway, a wisdom nugget. So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing that. And one of the things that stood out to me too is that sometimes when you have these micro stressors, you might be experiencing them with good intention. So for me, I like to help people. So it's a good intention, but it still sometimes can equate to a micro stress. Maybe somebody stops by at the last minute, I help them, and then maybe now I'm a little bit behind on a project, and then somebody else stops by and I help them, and I'm a little bit more behind, and it can just keep going and going and going. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think sometimes too, taking a pause to step back when we talk about how to manage the micro stressors, one of the suggestions was to find ways to help people help themselves or to help people to grow so that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to spend as much time actually doing the quote unquote help work, but
Yeah.
you kind of pass it back to them so that they feel empowered to help themselves. So that's one way. But again, you have to be intentional, even in doing that.
Yeah. I think it's, I don't want to call it like how do we fight micro stress, because I think that's how the article titles it. But I think it's all about managing and balancing our lives. It's of course easier said than done, but I think like appropriately setting that healthy boundary, and
Yes.
then I think push back on micro stress and stressors in concrete and then practical ways by
Hmm.
setting that healthy boundary. Because and then one other practical way that I started doing it is that I start blocking the time that are commuting, right? Because I think yes, we have a transition from COVID, and then now we have to go to offices. And then we are so used to like get up and dialing in, or get up and start working from, whenever. We're Now that we have shifted from that, so like me really blocking, like, hey, like from this time, I cannot attend to your phone call, or
Right.
I can respond to your email because I am actually driving, right?
Hmm.
So just kind of even blocking the time for commuting, blocking certain time to eat or take a like appropriate bio break. Those are all safe boundaries for us to maintain our energy,
Yes.
so that we could be more productive, right? And
Yes,
then,
they
yeah,
are.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
those are
then,
great points. And to your point, being intentional about putting those boundaries on your calendar and holding to them.
mhm. And then as you mentioned, I think it's also helpful when we take a good look at ourselves and those around us to like really identify who's causing this. Because at the end of the
Yes.
day, you could be causing it too. I could be
Yes.
causing it too, because we're all trying to do what's best. And then we all have our to-do list and our sense of urgency and important priority list. So you want to think about who's causing what, what's causing who, and take a like really honest inventory of what's happening around us, right? That
Yes.
self-awareness.
It's so important. So very important. Oh my goodness. Well, Saino, we are almost out of time. Do we want to share maybe one key takeaway for the listeners to take with them as we wrap up this session?
Yeah, for me is that stress is natural things that we go through, but these micro stresses that are they're unrecognized and then unnoticed, and then it's eventually going to weigh us down. We need to handle it right away. So my, I guess, key takeaway is that when you start to feel overwhelmed, take a pause and then take a step back and regroup. That would be my
Excellent.
takeaway. Yeah.
Excellent takeaway. And I completely agree. My takeaway is similar to yours, that reflection is just so important. So taking that pause, thinking about, as we discussed earlier, who is contributing, and then coming up with an action plan. So what are you going to do next? And when you do move forward on your action plan, celebrate your small wins. This might not be
Mhm.
something that you can fix overnight, but celebrate those small the progress that you do make, because it's important. And remember, if you are experiencing a lot of microstress, you are not alone.
Yes.
So just remember that it's not something you're going to fix overnight, but if you keep at it, you can definitely become a better manager of your microstress.
Great.
All right. Well, see you next time, everyone.
See you next time.